Hello and welcome to We're So Bloody Early. My name is Jake. I'm 33 years old. I'm a husband and a recent dad. This show is going to be a focus on Bitcoin and how our journeys to this amazing new asset class has affected our lives. I personally have been lucky to work as a broker through my life, an investor, and a couple of failed startups behind me. I'm very excited to start this new project. And these are my two great co-hosts, Matty and Jigs.
Hi guys, I'm Matt. I'm a 35-year-old father and husband, massive lover of sport. I'm an aerospace engineer come entrepreneur. I've been running my own engineering consultancy now for 5 years. I have a diverse range of skills across multiple industry sectors, and that's now led me to my new love, Bitcoin.
And I'm Jigs, 41 years of age, husband, father of three. Worked in the cash and transit industry for 20 years in a labor-intensive job. Recently retired for about a year now. I'm a stay-home dad and a hybrid trader.
Together we're the co-hosts of the We're So Bloody Early show. In the future, you'll expect to hear from some special guests that we get along to talk through their experiences. Hopefully we'll be creating some educational content that brings our friends and family along on this journey as well. And we hope you enjoy. Always reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to the We're So Bloody Early podcast. Today we're going to have a much closer look at how we actually get involved in Bitcoin. How do you buy this stuff? It's a complex and tricky process. It's got much better over the years. I'm sure we'll touch on some amusing stories of how we've done it in the past and how things went wrong. But yeah, hopefully today we'll learn a lot more about how to physically get your hands on this asset that we're so excited about. So to kick things off, I'm going to go to Matty and just say, Matty, can you give us a quick summary on how you first bought Bitcoin and what were some of the problems you came across doing it?
Yeah, good evening, Jigs and Jake. Always pleased to start an evening. I think the initial part of purchasing Bitcoin stems back just even slightly before that, was just getting my head around what it was. And we've spoken about that previously. And so for a newbie like myself coming into the space, it was trusting myself with some information that Jigs had given me initially, and going down the path of investigating it through an external exchange. There are quite a few out there. I was pretty naive to the concept of protecting my Bitcoin as well through an external exchange, and I guess we can talk about that a little bit later. But fundamentally, it is a complex process, I think, in terms of the security aspect and the long-term nature of that through cold storage or external wallets, and Jigs will touch on a couple other methods, I'm sure. But for me, it was essentially just getting in and learning. And to start off with, it was being directed to a couple of external exchanges and investing small sums, learning how to trust a transfer, just how do you literally transfer something from your bank account to an external exchange, and then nervously waiting for that money to come through. It was quite real. And
just to jump in there, Matty, so who was the first exchange that you used? How did you find out about it? Did you get recommended it? And what was the process like? Did you have to just do a bank transfer? How did it actually work?
Yeah, Jigs put me onto a few. Crypto.com was the initial one with the Celsius network. Ended up storing my Bitcoin there a bit later, but the Crypto.com, there's a verification of ID, driver's license, required photos. I'm pretty sure I had to hold up that piece of paper that once got rejected from me. So that took, I reckon, a couple of days to get verified. And then the initial deposit took another good 2 to 3 days to go through. So even to some of the listeners, if you're thinking you're buying Bitcoin tomorrow and you haven't got a setup, it's probably not going to be that quick. I know a couple of friends that have tried to set up through Liquid Pro, which is a great exchange for buying Celsius if you're not doing OTC stuff. And I actually quite like Liquid Pro from the ability to set a limit on where you're buying Bitcoin as well. It's a bit more flexible than Crypto.com, even though there was obviously a hack a little bit earlier this year. I think they've got their security back back up and running. So there is a process, but it is about that trusted person that you're listening to that has done it before. And I won't pretend to know all the ins and outs about which is the best exchange, but the reality is that people listening to this, there is that small bit of time lag that requires someone to create a wallet, get verified, confirmed, get to your bank and transfer that. And I actually know there's some Australian banks that have blocked exporting of some fiat into an external exchange. So all those things need to be navigated through, and it does take a little bit of time, but I have Jigs to thank a lot for directing me. He's a master. So I'm going to handball it straight to you, Jake, to send it to him.
Yeah, no, go for it. So yeah, there's a couple of things we could draw out of that, I guess. Let's ask Jigsy first. So Jigsy, when you first bought Bitcoin, how did you do it? And can you talk us through some of the steps, and perhaps then follow through to explain how you would prefer to do it now if you were starting from scratch? Because I'm sure you made some mistakes over the years.
Yeah, of course. Look, people coming into the space as well will always find it really weird and odd when an exchange asks you to give your ID, and you've got to hold up, you've got to send in your driver's license or your passport. You've got to hold up a piece of paper saying your name, the date, your email address or something like that. I don't know, just you're almost like making sure, like letting them know that a terrorist doesn't have a gun to your head or something like that. They want to see both hands in the picture and all this stuff, which is weird the first time you're doing it, but you understand why. These things can happen. You're not going into a bank like you would, but then again, in a bank, it could take days for it to be verified. Here, look, it's normally 24 hours. But then there's also other exchanges that I would like to be able to purchase on, like Gemini or something like that, and you can't, just because they've got great security. So I have to go, especially with us, I've always found that in the beginning, you have to find exchanges that work with your bank. A lot of the banks in Australia will block it. You've got your Bank of Melbourne or your ANZ that I've had friends that have been blocked there, but like a CBA or some of the other banks, they'll let you use it. So you just have to find that. And I also think it's important not to just have one exchange, but to have multiple exchanges, because in the last run up where we went from 3,000 to 14,000, everyone started trying to sell. If your alts are going off their head and you're trying to move some of that value of your alts into Bitcoin, all of a sudden exchanges just shut down. They can't handle the volume. And so it's important to have you've been holding XRP for 4 years, and then all of a sudden XRP does a run and you're like, okay, this is it. This is my chance to get out and move that value back into Bitcoin. You might say you have all your XRP on CoinSpot, and then CoinSpot is not doing any transactions because they're just getting overloaded and they're not doing ins and out withdrawals. But if you had it split over CoinSpot and Crypto.com, well, at least you can get 50% of your position out, and get it back into Bitcoin. So that's what I found just with, those two run-ups, the 3 to 14,000, and maybe again, the 4,000 to 60,000 as well. I found if you have multiple and you're looking to move out of position, maybe diversify into different exchanges. And that way, if there's a hack or if anything happens, you haven't got all your eggs in one basket. That's my take on that.
And how about you, Jake, mate? How did you end up buying your first bit of Bitcoin?
Yeah, cool. There's a few points I just want to touch on before I go to that. So to people out there learning for the first time, it's interesting to hear, the discussions about your identity and the importance of these exchanges having your identity. It's all connected to something called KYC, which is Know Your Customer, which is also connected to AML, which is the anti-money laundering regulations. So all of these exchanges are financially regulated in Australia or the UK, and some of them are actually domiciled in tax havens. And so you have to be conscious of which service you're using and where they actually are. And there is, by definition, exchange risk. And so what people look at is
what are the chances of this exchange being either hacked, so your Bitcoin can get stolen, or it could get frozen, or equally the exchange not functioning, so what Jigs just touched on, its service just ends. And lastly, it's really around exchange risk in terms of government regulation. So if someone in the government steps in tomorrow and says you need to freeze all of the assets on your balance sheet, well, then potentially you can't either exchange your Bitcoin or you can't get access to it. So there's some really important angles to this whole discussion to consider when you're thinking about how to buy it and where to store it. We'll get onto storage later. The general phrase for these exchanges is they're on-ramps or ramps. So to get your money out of your British pounds or Australian dollars, you've got normal bank accounts with the NatWest or the Commonwealth Bank or whatever. You set up a bank transfer to Coinbase or CoinFloor, or here in Australia, CoinJar, or whoever you might be using, Bitaroo, Independent Reserve, Amber. There's hundreds and hundreds of services doing this now. And you're ramping from fiat into Bitcoin, and understanding how you do it is quite important. It's not critical when you first do it, in my opinion. It's just a case of you've got to get in there, you've got to get batting, you've got to have some skin in the game, start learning about it all. To answer the question about how did I first do it, in 2015 I first bought Bitcoin, and it was around about the time when Coinbase started getting some decent traction, and so I used Coinbase. It's pretty straightforward. It's British bank account, connected up to Coinbase, bought Bitcoin. Interestingly, it's now illegal in the UK, or it's been looked at from a regulatory perspective, and Coinbase have now, or NatWest, I think it's the traditional banking system is making life very difficult. So you can't send money or your pounds from NatWest to Coinbase any longer to purchase crypto. We're seeing this in all sorts of other places as well. So Binance, for example, in the UK, it's difficult to move money in and out of your traditional account to an exchange. And I think a threat that we must all be aware of is governments are looking at crypto from a regulatory perspective. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's a threat to their dominance on money. And they're going to make it difficult to use these ramps. So having a plan, which is what Jigs and Matty have both referred to, get your KYC done, get your AML done, so that you can literally just send money. So yeah, I use Coinbase first. I now use CoinFloor. I haven't done too much in Australia, but Independent Reserve's my self-managed super fund that I'm using. So I've got an ANZ account with self-managed super that then is connected to Independent Reserve, and it all required due diligence and documentation to get set up. A couple of points on that being, there's a huge libertarian vibe to Bitcoin. The separation of money and state is a huge potential impact on all of our lives and the future. And lots of Bitcoiners take their privacy very seriously. They take their liberty very seriously, and they don't like the concept of KYC or AML. And so for us with money in traditional bank accounts, there's very few ways to get Bitcoin without using these ramps that are regulated, essentially. But people love, for example, Bitcoin mining, and they do it at home, and they can generate Bitcoin because they get paid by the Bitcoin network. And that's a way of earning no KYC Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. Conversation for another time, though. One problem I would summarize that I had during this is, even this year, I was transferring money from NatWest to CoinFloor to buy Bitcoin, and I used the limit on my NatWest account for online banking transactions. You know, have a certain amount you can send every day. And my NatWest account got frozen. Absolutely crazy. And it then turned out that, this drove me fucking mad. So I was trying to send my money to CoinFloor to do what I want, right? And CoinFloor said, well, we can't see the cash yet. We don't know what's going on. I had to call NatWest. I was in Australia, and they were like, sorry, it's the fraud department's in charge. I thought, well, how do I get hold of them? Oh, they're only open from 9 till 5. Okay, well, what's their contact number? Sorry, they don't have a contact number. Well, how am I supposed to get hold of them? They'll call you on your registered phone number. And it was my old English mobile. And I'm like, well, I don't have that phone number any longer. So how are they going to get hold of me? And they're like, oh, so we're not sure. It's like, you've taken control of all my money. What the hell is going on here? So yeah, it's quite a funny story in a sense, but the traditional banking system is making life more and more tricky to take your value out of their system and into the world of crypto, which on the one hand is a challenge, but on the other hand is also real recognition of the value creation that's happening outside of their control.
Which is understandable why they're doing that. I mean, they're just seeing this massive outflow of people going, well, I earn point something percent of interest in a savings account in a normal bank. So if I move it out into one of these yield accounts where you're getting paid 8% to 12%, why wouldn't you move? And that's why they're making it hard. I mean, I've moved everything out of my traditional banking into, you know, the crypto world. And the only time I ever is when I'm taking profits or collateralized loans, I move the other way. So they're not going to stop me moving my money back in. But I just don't hold anything in there anymore because of the headaches. And they're going to fight it. Of course they're going to fight it. Well,
and that's a, oh, sorry, Matty, you were going to say something, go on.
Yeah, no, I just think what you said there, Jake, and Jigs is not to be underestimated. From a newbie's aspect, I think in the crypto space or the broader crypto space, the understanding of the control of fiat in a bank account is real. And from the research I've done, from the people I've spoken to in higher positions in the banking sector, it's only going to get more and more difficult to have liberty on what you choose to spend your money on. And that is a planned action that undoubtedly, from what I understand, will occur most likely in the next 5 years. And to think that someone may stop you from going on a holiday or may stop you purchasing liquor at a liquor store, or God forbid, you know, going to the shopping center and only being able to allocate a certain amount of money. This is no longer fable. This is actually.
Well, it happened during the pandemic. My friends in South Africa still, I don't know if still, but for almost all entire time of the pandemic, they've been not allowed to buy any alcohol. Like, imagine you're 40 years old and all liquor shops are shut down and you're not allowed to buy. It's illegal. Like, that is just, if that happened in this country, there would be carnage overnight. That's probably why they haven't done it. But there's a lot of sleeping sheep still.
And I think that comes back to the whole original question, Jake, about, you know, how did we originally start out buying Bitcoin, and the journey that we've gone down is the journey. If one is interested in this space, it's a really important step to take, because there are different stories about the difficulties as well as the ease, depending on the application and the amount. But Jigs spoke about a 24-hour process. In some instances, once you're set up, the transaction speed's incredible. You know, I've sent some money to Jigs, who's transferred stuff to me so quickly. It's been amazing. But that initial setup, I've had an uncle want to set up a Liquid Pro account, and he actually just got rejected, like blatantly got rejected. And I actually helped him set up, so I felt like a bit of a fool. But for some reason, there are just some reasons that banks will stop you sending money that you've spoken about, Jigs, as well as Jake. And it's
for your own good.
It's for your own good. That's the point.
Of course it is.
Yeah. And to newbies though, I had lunch today with some family, and the understanding of protecting or preserving wealth, you know, through Bitcoin, and whether that's a small amount or a large amount, repeating myself from previous episodes, the journey doesn't start unless you open up an account somewhere, and the journey doesn't start until you make that initial deposit. So for anyone that's listening, do your research, listen to what we've said. I'm sure if you want to reach out to us individually through a message or on Twitter or otherwise, please feel free to do so. And
there's a great Mark Yusko always hashtags get off zero, and Anthony Pompliano did a great speech, and that was a couple of years ago, and I recorded it. We'll just cut out the bit that he was talking about, just get off zero, and I'll actually put it in the link up in this corner, one of the corners. And yeah, it's a really good listen just to get off zero, just to have an insurance policy against this fiat system that's been in action for 50 years now and is failing horribly.
I'll talk about, that's a topic for another day as well.
Yes, of course.
Even though, but no, that's a valid point though. But like even from an insurance aspect, whether it's personal insurance or otherwise, this is not financial advice by any means, but my self-insurance now is Bitcoin. Like I'll just keep putting more and more money into Bitcoin, and that's my insurance fund.
So when you say more and more money, are you dollar cost averaging in each week, or
yeah, every Monday.
Every Monday, and do you do that through exchanges?
Yes.
Is that how you do it? Yeah. So is it an automated setup, or do you just do it yourself?
No, I know with Jake and yourself mentioned Amber before, and we've spoken about that with a sort of a weekly withdrawal and set amount. I'm not there yet, but at the moment it's just a physical.
Amber's definitely one to look at. I mean, they were just exceptional. I mean, I set it up for my kids, and I was just doing $30 every Tuesday or Wednesday morning, and just automatic, just buying for my kids. And it's great because it'll show you the return of investment over the time and the average cost price, and it was really good.
Well, my self-insurance costs are just ridiculous. I don't see value in paying for something that this is, again, my own humble opinion. I'd rather put my money in Bitcoin and use that as my insurance protection method as well. It preserves my wealth as well as preserving my own sanity for looking after me and my family. It's just an alternative option to what's out there, and there's not many. I've seen a couple of posts from Jake recently, and I'm loving it because, and if anyone's not following Jake or Jigs, please do so. You're missing out on some great content. But
I'm not as busy as Jake.
Yeah, Jake.
I'm enjoying Twitter at the moment. It's good.
You are indeed. We enjoy.
Just to jump in, boys. There's you've brought up a bunch of important things, but the one I want to just really highlight at the moment is, as we talk about how to buy Bitcoin or what process to use, we've touched on something called a dollar cost average. So Matty, perhaps you can just talk through what process you've set up and how you're actually doing that. You kind of just touched on it, and why is a DCA important?
I think, what's that famous saying you use, Jigs? Don't catch falling knives or something like that? Is that right?
Well, that's right. We don't want to catch a falling knife.
Do you want to elaborate? I mean, before I speak, do you want to just elaborate a little bit on what that means? Because I think that's really important to the DCA method. And the reason why I say that is for a newbie as well. It's to see.
Well, perfect example is, if you want, the market's pumping, it's going up to 60 grand, like it was back in May. FOMO crowd comes in and goes, I want to jump on this train, and they put in 10 grand or 100 grand, right? And then the market falls 50%, okay? And that scares you out of position, and you go, oh, I don't want to be a part of this, and you pull out and you've lost 50%, and you've lost 50 grand. Whereas if you dollar cost averaged in and just bought every week, from that fall of, I think it was 60 grand down to 30 grand, you've just bought all the way down, well, your average cost price would be 45, and it wouldn't scare you out of position. And it's a lot smarter way to do it than just lump buying,
Yeah, that leveraging of risk through dollar cost averaging is what attracted me to understanding. So naturally, one may have an allocation of money that they want to invest. Now, if you buy today, what's today's prices? Jigs, just roughly, is it 55?
55, something like
USK,
yeah. US, yeah. So say you come in,
looked at it for a week.
So say you come in and you buy at 55, 56, and you're a newbie, and you've invested a bit of money that you can't afford to lose, and the market has a correction. Without that strategy we spoke about previously, or without the understanding of why you're doing it, undoubtedly one may jump off the ship. Now, if, as Jigs mentioned, if you've got, let's just use the number 100, if you, rather than investing 100 today, I've looked at that personally saying, well, I want to spread 100 over 12 months. And through that 12-month period, I may see the 56 we're seeing today, but you know what? I also seen the 38 that we seen in, was it July, August? I've also seen the 40, the 50 to the 43. So I've caught Bitcoin, as Jake wisely put, where I deserve to catch Bitcoin. If you're willing to be patient in this game, is what I've learned very quickly, and have a strategy such as DCA versus lump buying, then the reality is you've probably got a better appetite to leverage your risk rather than selling and catch that falling knife, which I think a lot of newbies could do without the understanding of the volatility of the market. So for me, that's what DCA done. And how do I do that? It's just a Monday. It's a Monday afternoon. Finish my job, finish work, and set aside 20 minutes and deposit some money in, and just hope I am buying enough.
Which service are you using to actually do that with?
I've actually changed. I was using crypto.com, but I'm finding I can get a much more competitive price at Liquid Pro.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm finding I can get Liquid Pro to fill an order at a lesser price than what crypto.com sets.
Okay. Yeah, so with the DCA, I see there's a bit of discussion around it, because there's two sides to the argument. If you're going to buy and hold for 4 years, like the minimum kind of halving process, then actually there is some evidence to show that lump sum purchase is the way to go. But it's also the most ballsy / the most risky. And if you do freak out in the near term and then sell at a loss, you've fucked it.
Yeah, humans, and what I mean, like you say, you're 4 years, you might buy at the top and then
you could.
Humans are just terrible investors. Emotion just gets the best of them.
Yeah,
I bought at the top, seen a drawdown of 85%, and then they bail out. Whereas, what I've found is with the hash ribbons, which is a minor capitulation on the weekly chart, generally you get your first hash ribbons buy signal about 70 to 40 weeks before halvening. So we all know when the halvening is going to be. Like there's a date.
We already know that. There's
a date set, and look, it can fluctuate between a week, but you generally know where it's going to be. You know it's going to be in May or whatever month it is, and so if you forecast 70 weeks before that, and then 70 to 4 weeks, and you start dollar cost averaging in those, I think it's about 8 weeks, and you dollar cost average, say you put in $100 a week out of your paycheck, that's that's eight is it 8 months? I think it's 8 months. Let me just have a look. I'll just check.
Why are you looking for that, Jigs? So the Jack is the one thing.
8 months. So and you dollar cost in $100 a week over 8 months. That's $3,200, right? Now you wait and you don't, like, obviously people can't do it now, but this is, if you back test it, you can see that this works out quite nicely. And then you wait until the halving, and you wait till 70 weeks after the halving to 90 weeks, right? And you sell over 4 or 5 months weekly, right? You'll make a pretty profit, and it works out to about 3 years, which is actually pretty good, the power of 3. But also what it gives you is if you sell within a 12-month range, you're going to cop a massive capital gains tax bill. But now if you're waiting 3 months and you're giving it time, I mean, I had someone this week who works in a legacy bank, right? One of our listeners who contacted me privately, and I asked, he said, look, I've got substantial money that I'll be listening to us, which is awesome because we're touching someone, and said that he wants to invest and how should he go about doing it? And he just wanted to come with a lump. And I said, well, look, and that was last week. And I said, look, you can come with a lump. We don't know. We don't know if it's going to have a nice little pullback. We don't know. So just dollar cost averaging over, 5 weeks or whatever it is, or 6 weeks. It's up to him, because everyone's got a different risk tolerance. And then don't even look at it. It's a 3-year investment. Don't even look at it, and then we'll look to get out further down the track. And it's really hard. People need to accept that and get that into their mindset first when they're coming in. This is not a get rich quick.
Well, Jigs and Jay, can I just add from a newbie's perspective, right? The lump sum aspect that Jake referenced to as the ballsier option. The ability for one to set and forget with a lump sum option as a newbie, I think, is almost impossible. And what I respectfully mean by that versus a dollar cost average method is, let's say someone has, like one of our great listeners, as Jigs has just referenced, if they potentially put that lump sum today, and let's say an Evergrande announcement pending comes out this week, right? There will be a correction in the market. That contagion effect will be real. How does that person feel? Well, probably potentially a little bit nervous. You know, that
unless they've done 1,000 hours, like Saylor said.
They'll be shooting themselves, Matty. I think.
Yeah, 1,000 hours of your conviction is so high, then you don't
be like, what have I done?
They will be shitting themselves, and rightly so. But the rightly so aspect is because they're looking at it from a short-term aspect. So when a newbie and myself, the lump sum aspect, I think if someone has the ability to have the understanding strategically of a mid to long term, let's call it a 3-year plan, as Jigs referenced before, then you know what, that set and forget aspect, I think is a potential really good way of doing it. But if someone has a tendency to check their external exchange 3 times a day and see a rise of 20%, they may sell. You know, not only they may not sell on the downside, they may sell on the upside and miss the understanding of why they're getting involved with it. And I think that's that preservation of wealth. I've had to hammer that into myself to say, you know what, Matt, I'm really proud that I'm a newbie. I don't own a massive amount of Bitcoin. I'm on my way to owning my full first Bitcoin, which I'm really proud of. And that's from the long-term strategy aspect. It really, for me, is the understanding, okay, the markets will do what the markets will do today, tomorrow, this month. But over the course of a strategy, that lump sum aspect, I understand it. But from a newbie, I think the shitting themselves aspect, the DCA method is really worth understanding for sure. But I'm keen to hear a bit more about your lump sum strategy, Jay.
Well, let me draw a few things out that I think are important. As we've said, you know, if you're out there wondering what the hell should I do, what is Bitcoin, then this dollar cost average process works really nicely. So whether or not you've got, you know, 10 grand you want to invest, you put it in $1,000 a week over 10 weeks, it's less stressful. So you can have a more like, this is the strategy, let's go for it. You buy the average of those 10 weeks. It actually often can buy you a better price than what happens on the day because of the volatility of Bitcoin. And we've spoken about a few things. Jigs has mentioned the hash ribbons. There are some technical analytics that can be done to understand the sentiment within the market today. So there's the fear and greed index, there's stuff called the RSI and the stochastic RSI. This is when
way too technical for the
trading stuff gets more technical.
Yeah.
So there are ways of working out when is a good time to buy and when is a good time to sell. But from an entry level point of view, those aren't things you want to be talking about initially. So I think that the DCA option is more palatable to most people. And that then brings me on to think about something, again, to mention Mark Yusko that I heard him talk about so well, which is price action and value are different things. And when someone sees the price move up and down, they are, in a sense, motivated by something different, which is that more fear and greed complex. But long story short, a property's value can be valued at X, but the price it gets sold at can be X plus or minus whatever happened to happen on that day. So if you look at a $50,000 Bitcoin price and you think, actually, I think that's good value, when the price drops by $5,000, it becomes better value. And this is the critical concept to get across. Whereas, like, if you steam in at 55 grand and then it drops by 5 grand, you're like, oh my God, I've lost 10% of my investment. And you don't see that as an opportunity to accumulate more, then 55 grand wasn't value. You didn't buy it at the right value in your own mind. So just a thing to think about is the disconnect between value and price. So moving on, basically, the DCA option is really useful for a lot of people to enter the market. And there's plenty of services that help you do that. So we've mentioned a few different exchanges. I recommend Amber to friends. It's the best iOS app. It's really straightforward. You download it, you connect your bank account. Let's say you don't have any savings to invest, but you get, monthly salary payments, and you get a remainder left over. You could set up, $200 a week, $100 a week, whatever you want to put in, and it just automatically does it. So over time, you're just accruing the average price of the curve, which again reduces stress levels. You don't check the price all the time. And as you learn more about Bitcoin, often people start to realize the value that they're buying at is incredible versus the potential future value. Like even at 55K, I see Bitcoin today as unbelievably cheap. And you don't see that from the outside until you start researching further.